Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Talkback. I'm Jordan Lewis. I'll be your moderator for tonight, as well as.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much.
Oh, no. Sorry, I was playing it on two screens because I love this show so much. I'm also the dramaturg for the production. I'm a junior theater major with a design tech emphasis. I want to go ahead and jump right in and start introducing our guests for tonight's Talkback. First, we have our amazing director and fearless leader, Dr. Hillary Cooperman, who is an assistant professor at Rollins College. She researches topics around performance theory and racial and social justice. Thank you, Hillary.
Hi, everyone.
Next, we have Tiara. She served as the hair and makeup designer for Ohio State Murders. She's a sophomore exploring biology and biochemistry. She is so grateful to have served our community and worked on a show that showcases the talent that Black people have. She hopes that this show will touch many people and influence decisions they make in their everyday lives. Next, we have Gina Fawaz. She served as the Associate Director of Ohio State Murder. She's a junior double majoring in psychology with a double emphasis in performance and directing. She feels honored to have worked on such a powerful show with so many remarkable people to share the message that Black lives have and always will matter. Next, we have Faith Artist. She portrayed Suzanne Alexander in Ohio State Murders. She's a senior majoring in theater. She's super excited to be a part of the first Black playwright show in the Annie history, and she wants to pursue more education in African American theater in the future. Finally, we have Bernard, who is returning Rollins Theater graduate from the class of 2016 who played the role of David. He now works in television and teaches acting in his local country of the Bahamas and is currently working on season 2 of Goombay Kids, a kids show of the Bahamian National Television that he co-created. Thank you all for being here, and I hear we have questions pouring in, so let's just go ahead and jump into our questions. And just, Bernard, do you want to start us off?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, Caitlin Harrington, we were at Rollins together. I love you. Thank you so much for watching. It's so great. First of all, I just want to say I'm so glad to be back with you guys. What an amazing treat during this kind of, situation to be able to return to my alma mater and perform on the Annie stage virtually, albeit. So to answer Caitlin's question, what was the greatest gift and the biggest challenge of presenting this play virtually? Well, I think my favorite thing about presenting it virtually is that our incredible director, Hillary, allowed us so much freedom in terms of creating images and creating experiences using the limitations and the advantages we had because of this platform. So we were able to create lines towards each other through the screen. We experimented with using sounds and lights and positioning of boxes and all these kinds of things. And Hillary really let us kind of loose and let us play and experiment. And then we took that all and synthesized it into something, concrete. And that was my favorite part of presenting it virtually.
If I may add to that, one of the things that I personally, when we decided to do it virtually, I'm currently a virtual student at Rollins right now. So I was very happy because that meant that I was able to be a part of the show in a more active role. And to be honest, I just felt like it was so necessary for it to be virtual so that we can ensure the safety of our actors and our patrons, but at the same time so that more people can see this really important show. Because, instead of having a small audience safely, distanced, now we have hundreds of people who are going to watch the show and really, really capture the important message that it's trying to tell, especially nowadays when we really need to be reminded that Black lives matter and that systematic racism is still very prevalent in our country. So I was really happy about that. And also, if we didn't have it virtual, we wouldn't have Bernard, nor Malachi, nor Tiara, since they're all based in outside of Orlando. And I think that is a gift in itself.
Hillary, do you want to start us off with this question?
Sure. So I chose this play we were supposed to do a different play originally before COVID hit, Lynn Nottage's play, Intimate Apparel. It is a season of women, and it was important to me and to our department to do a play written by a Black woman for that slot when things went south and we weren't able to do Lynn Nottage's play. I have always not always. I think I was introduced to Adrienne Kennedy probably in my early 20s. And I had read her play An Owl Answers. And I was really drawn to the very sort of layered imagistic approach she took to her writing. I think like that. I prefer things that aren't as realistic because I love to take advantage of the theatrical form and its abilities and powers. So I really like to try and see what the theatrical environment can do, which is interesting because then we move this into Zoom, which is another thing. But I also love the way that she addresses the complexity of race. And I think at this time, looking back at the historical production of the way race has been part of the way society and spaces have been constructed is really important. I think, I don't know if it was something people naturally drew from this, but I'm very interested personally in space and the way bodies are a part of space. And Adrienne Kennedy writes very much about the way race is inscribed and mapped throughout space, or racism, I should say. So that also really drew me to this. I love that it was a story. It was a very simple story as it was told. We did take some liberties with the script. We broke it up into many voices, whereas it was mostly just Suzanne Alexander in the play, with the rest sort of being represented through images, that actors would do on the stage. But in this format, that was really important because, we wanted to involve a lot of people in this play. And we felt that those characters, we wanted to give voice to those characters in the way that we did the play. So anyway, those are some of the reasons that I chose the play. But I also just love the literary references, and I mean, it was so rich from a language perspective as well that I thought it would be a real challenge for our students to delve into and to play these roles.
So when the second part of the question was what made you audition, I've been secretly dropping hints that we should do a Black playwright written play for a very long time. So that's always been a thing. I was like, hey, what if we did Sister Act? What a crazy idea if we did Sister Act. And so very slowly but surely. So I've always wanted to do something that wasn't, because one of the things that I found very interesting here was the fact that because of our different demographics that we have here at Rollins, we just frankly ended up having a lot more shows that I not always related to. And I personally was just I'm really excited because this is something that I actually can relate to. And I personally really relate myself to Suzanne being in a higher education where most of the demographics is mostly a different race than I am. So I put a lot, I obviously have not had an affair with any of my professors. I just wanted to put that out there just for future reference, but I just wanted to put that out there. But I still feel a very close relationship with Suzanne. So I thought that it would be a great idea to audition. So yeah.
Thank you, Faith. Frankie asks, to all the Black women, what's the main messages you want the non-Black audience members to take away about Black women then and now? And Tiara, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. I think that a lot of times individually when we go through trauma, and Black women go through trauma in a very specific way where we sort of put it all away to focus on the present instead of dealing with the traumas that we have and that have happened to us. And so we come off as very strong, even though in the background there are all these things that have happened to us and we are very emotionally scarred. And a lot of times we think that we're alone in our trauma. And so what I would like Black women to take from this show is that you're not alone in your trauma. You're experiencing a lot of things that other Black women in your generation have experienced and in previous generations have experienced. And just to, find those people who fit into your groups, of what you've experienced, because you will find a lot of strength in the people who have gone through the same things as you. And to pull together in that sort of way will strengthen our community more. Because when you work on the foundation, then what is shown to the rest of the world ends up being so great, so amazing. And what I would want non-Black viewers to take away from the show is to just pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Always keep your eyes open. There's a lot of times where at Rollins, I walk into situations and I am the only Black person in the room. And that puts me on edge a lot of going into these situations where I have to be very vigilant. So watch out for your Black peers, your Black friends, people who have married into your family that may be Black. It's a lot of times we are portrayed as very strong, very aggressive. We are still very fragile and very human. And I think that is something that is sometimes overlooked due to stereotypes that have been put out against us that don't profit us in the long run, essentially. So that's what I would say for non-Black viewers to take away is just pay attention to those around you. See what you can do. No one's asking you to specifically go out and protest in the streets from dusk to dawn, type thing. But just watch. There's different ways of being an ally. It's not always just protesting. Sometimes it's being an ear, to our stories and things like that. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, like Tiara really said it all, as well as just believing us. I think there's plenty of instances right now where there's just instances of someone being like, hey, this happened to me. And people are just like, well, sorry that happened. It's like, well, I don't know how to describe any more of these types of instances to you if you don't understand like what I said as truth in the first place. Malcolm X obviously said like the most disrespected woman is a Black woman. Like we really take into account that when that happens. I think there's a lot of times where specifically Black women like are up in arms for their Black men. They're on the streets ready to fight for them. But I feel as if there are times where like when the time comes and it's needed to be had, like there's no one else to back us up. So it's literally just believe us and listen and be more open-minded, I would say. Because there are times where like you can have like, free discourse and everything else. But I think disregarding the entire discussion in the first place because of your own prior bias doesn't help the situation at all. And it doesn't lead anyone to getting anything done. So, yeah.
Taylor asks, what was the most enriching part of being an actress or an actor during the global pandemic? Bernard, if you want to start us.
Oh, I would love to. Actually, first I want to say, not that I was asked to answer the last question, but I think my thing with that is protect Black women, protect them from pain, from emotional burden as well, intellectual burden, exhaustion. That's what I would say on that for any non-Black women out there like myself. But in terms of being an actor during the global pandemic, as someone who lives outside of the United States, it's been incredible to be able to collaborate with actors and creators outside of the Bahamas where I live, where there's limited opportunity, limited access to theater. So the pandemic, while it's been very limiting in some ways, has been just wonderfully freeing for me to be able to act across borders and to be able to practice my craft for the first time in a while. I am an actor, but I haven't been able to act in a while, and this is one of my first theater productions in a while, and so that's been fantastic. So, yeah.
Aaron says, why were some people in color and some people are in black and white? Gina, do you want to answer that for us?
Sure. So the easy answer to that is that, you know, with working on this new virtual platform, we took a full day at the beginning of our rehearsal process to just explore Zoom, right? Because this whole show was on Zoom. And we played around with, like, you know, different, formatting in the frame and different filters. And one of the coolest moments was when I don't remember who it was, but someone put themselves in this black and white filter. And automatically everyone just kind of was like, that looks so cool. Like, you know, and that was a moment where we realized, like, wait a second, this Zoom thing could work, right? Because in person, you would be able to distinguish Suzanne from the kind of ghost memories that she's interacting with throughout the play. But virtually, it was a bit difficult for to distinguish, okay, Suzanne is in the present, they're in the past. How do we make that visually look good? And then when we saw the black and white, and it looked so, it just looked beautiful to just see everyone in black and white, we decided that let's go with this, and let's also keep faith in color, because that way it shows that it's not that long ago, right? There's this concept that there's a lot of photos and a lot of imagery about civil rights, or at the time when racism was, let's say, loud, you know, and it's all in black and white. When the reality is that it wasn't really that far ago, long ago, and a lot of people use these black and white imagery to portray that this was a thing past and that it's not happening anymore. But we wanted to kind of test the audience, right, and show them that these images that you're seeing affected this woman who is in the present right now. She is in color, and as you saw in a scene that I think Tiara can talk about more, when we portray the names of the fathers and mothers who have lost their children to racism, that happened now. That was a present experience for so many people. And I think it's just playing around, really, me and him, like playing around with the past and the present and trying to show people that it wasn't really the past, it's now. And Tiara, if you want to talk about that scene a little bit more, please go for it, because it was so beautiful to watch come to all together.
And I think Caitlin just asked the same question, so it's great that you can answer it, Tiara, because Caitlin just asked about that exact scene in the chat. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess what inspired this was half sleep deprivation, and half just me wanting to connect more. During that scene, we originally had everyone named with Ensemble, even though you can't see any of the names in the rest of the show, sadly. Everyone was named Ensemble. And in our meeting after one of the rehearsals that we did, I had this idea to give them all names, just to personalize. We were talking about how it kind of felt disconnected. And so I came up with the idea of us giving them names to personalize the connection and to make it feel like this is not just something that happened to this fictional character, Suzanne. This is something that has happened to a lot of mothers. This is something, or parents in general, because I included men as well. I was just saying, like, this is something that has happened to parents and is happening to parents. And no parent should have to bury their child. That is a huge burden to carry for their own child to be taken from them in such a violent way, and not at their time, or what we feel is their time to leave this earth. I wanted to really let the audience connect to that, and it felt like a very grounded way of doing that. I also included, like I said, some fathers who have lost their children, because a lot of times people talk about mothers, the love that a mother has for their child and losing their child. But we don't hear a lot about the burden that fathers carry for losing their child, because yes, the mother does carry the child and form a very good connection in that way, but the father still has to deal with those very same things. They still have, most times, connection with that child and still feel something for that child. And I also included, for the white characters in the show, I included 2 mothers who lost their children during the Black Lives Matter protests this year, just this year. You know, this is not just a thing that happens to Black people as well. In my research, I found that there were also Latinos who were killed during these protests and things of that sort. So I also wanted to give white mothers that too, because, you know, the way you grow up is very influential in the person you're going to be and show to the world. And it's clear that those children who were going out to these protests to stick up for their friends, you know, things like that, maybe family members of theirs, they were there for a good reason, and they had a good heart and a good reason to be there. And yet still they were taken. So no, they weren't taken directly due to racism, but they were taken due to being an ally and trying to work against the systematic racism that has been allowed to prevail in this country for so long, and in the world, really. You know, if you look across the world, a lot of people like to say, oh, it's America's thing, it's America's thing, but it's not just America's thing. It's everywhere. And, you know, originally the settlers aren't even American, you know, they're from Europe. So they're bringing ideas from way across the water. So, you know, it's not just an American thing. And I just really wanted to pay homage to them and make sure that those connections were being made, and that this wasn't just a surface level, oh, this is a fictional story, this is just a show thing. So that's why part sleep deprivation, of course, but why I originally thought we should include it.
Yeah, I also thought that this moment, the way that you did this moment, was ingenious for the reason of also justice, because one of the most painful moments in the play for me comes at the very end, and I have the quote here. The university protected Robert Hampshire for a long time. Nothing of the story came out in the papers. There were stories that a white professor had wandered into the Negro section of Columbus and was killed. So not only did Robert Hampshire, obviously because he killed himself as well, never face any repercussions for this crime. He was never convicted of the crime. Not only that, the crime of his murder was blamed on just random Black folks. And we know now that so many of these parents that you saw on the screen, including Tamika Palmer, the mother of Breonna Taylor, have not received justice for the killings of their children. And that's today in 2020, just this past month. So I thought that moment was so beautiful for that reason as well, because white people who have killed Black men and women are not facing justice in too many cases.
I have one other thing to say too about that scene and sort of the other ensemble scenes. One of the challenges of the Zoom environment is that, you know, you can't really act things out. I mean, you have like a camera and it's on a person, you know, it's not, it's not as three-dimensional. So one of the things I found difficult was to really understand sort of the emotional state of Suzanne. And so the ensemble scenes, to a large degree, you know, were to express that more imagistically, abstractly. And I think it's very much sort of keeping in with what Adrienne Kennedy, you know, some of her other plays, again, are very abstract, surreal, imagistic. But to have sort of that pain of losing a child, you know, the mother, you know, the mother and also the future generations annihilated, you know, is a harm to, you know, that I wanted to express beyond, you know, that one person, that I feel like it's a generational harm. You know, when people are being murdered, it's cutting off a race, honestly. You know, it is a kind of, you know, it's a cutting off of the future and of further generations. So there are certain moments in the play like that, that, you know, were so important to express sort of beyond, to give them a sense of the larger emotional realm that those actions and those events, and I'm sure that's what Adrienne Kennedy intended, you know, by writing a story where a mother loses twins, not just one, but two children, and that they're daughters, I think is also very important. And so, you know, a lot of the ensemble scenes, but I will say too, you know, that one, I sort of had an idea of beforehand, but I think all of the other ensemble scenes were created in rehearsals in the moment, by the actors bringing what they had to the rehearsal process and creating things. I mean, I think there were moments where I don't know what to do here. Let's create something, and actors did. And there was one time I said, Gina, I don't know what to do here. You do something, and Gina came up with that beautiful image of the string. I knew I wanted something structural, but I didn't know what. And so, Gina's like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. So I just love that this process. There's everyone I think has a moment in the play where it's their idea, their creation, beyond sort of the roles that they were bringing. I mean, Tiara was our hair and makeup designer. She attended every single rehearsal, and offered, I mean, as you said, the idea to name these mothers, I mean, was probably the most profound moment of the show. That didn't come from me. That came from an idea from someone who had been there and was present. So I just want to throw that out there too.
Sydney asked, was the intention of having twins portray Suzanne to reference her loss of agency through the loss of her children? Gina or Hillary, do you guys want to jump in?
Gina, why don't you take this, because you were a big advocate of the twins idea casting. Yes. Okay, first of all, Dassika and Diane are so talented. Everyone in the show is so talented, beyond talented. And when we had the opportunity to cast this show and give all these Black women roles, we thought about how Suzanne loses her two twin daughters. And we have a pair of two extremely talented Black women who could not only portray young Suzanne, but in a way portray the twins that should have survived, that could have been, that should have gone to college and had these experiences. And of course, the audience doesn't know this until the end when they both come on frame that they're twins, but that was so important for us to have, right? To have these two women portrayed in my opinion, like Suzanne is dealing with the loss of her children. And I think that one of the ways that people do that is by, one of the saddest things is thinking of what they could have been. And I think that when she says goodbye to them, it's such a powerful moment where everyone gets to realize that she's finally been able to say her story and how important that is, right? And it was so phenomenal to see everyone work together. And I felt like both Dassika and Diane and Faith created this connection, right? Because not only did they know that they were playing her younger self, but they were also playing her daughters. And I think it was so beautiful to see that come to fruition in this play. So I was very happy.
One other thing about that too, and I mean, obviously we didn't say, oh, we need to cast twins for this part.
Yeah, no,
that wasn't a criteria by Adrienne Kennedy. But what is interesting in the play is she describes Suzanne as noticeably like looking different. After she's pregnant and has to go away and leave college, she says something like she was thinner and dark, dressed in darker clothes. So there is a signal from the playwright that she has changed. And it was interesting because we felt the quality from Diane was kind of more of an innocence, a naivete. And from Dassika, it was a little darker, a little bit more, jaded. And so that really worked for us in terms of, giving both of these wonderful actresses a chance to play the role, but also the different qualities that they brought to those roles, we thought were perfect for that transition.
I also thought it was really nicely indicative of the cycle of violence when it comes to, the murder of Black women. Not necessarily the cycle of violence amongst, but from generation to generation, and like you said, Hillary, the cutting short of legacy. you know? This is what could have happened if they had survived. And it almost gives it a little bit of like a Christopher Nolan type time jump for me at the very end, which I think is super cool. But anyway, yeah, that's me.
Frankie asks, for Faith, what do you think was the most challenging part of taking on the role of Suzanne?
So let's say the lines. I'm kidding. I mean, yes, but yes, as well as the lines were incredibly difficult. I've never memorized that many lines in my entire life. I just want to put that out there. But because I like I said before, I very much like put myself into Suzanne, and I felt like a lot of responsibility playing this role. I was like, girl, we gotta pull through. We gotta do this right, or else you're never gonna make it anywhere. Not true, but you know, so we'll see what happens. But I personally found a huge struggle with like having so much pressure on myself, because I was like, this is a lot. It's a lot, and I felt myself like encapsulating so much and like thinking so much about all that was happening on the news, everything that was happening like in the current show, like what Suzanne was currently feeling, and like that was just a very stressful time. And like it helped, it like really helped me get into the role, but at the same time, it was just like, ugh, like going off screen and like having to take a breath, especially since like being in every single scene, I didn't have a lot of time to like sit down and like really like prepare myself for like what was happening. So I felt like it was really fun. I had a great time. Like it was really fun to like actually explore those kind of roles for the very first time, because I've usually only played like comedic reliefs. So this is one of my very first times I've ever played a dramatic role. So that was also like not smiling for 20 minutes. Can you do that? That was also like something that I felt. Suzanne, like I'll always love Suzanne. She was an amazing character, and I can't wait till I'm actually her age, so then I can like believably play her without the need of like wig and like age makeup. Like I can't wait to like play her again. That's the best part about like being in college. I can do this again later on. So it's like yeah, I would say that I'm gonna miss Suzanne. I really am. I'm really excited that I got to play her in this opportunity. This one's a two-parter, by the way.
Robert asks, young Suzanne had a picture of Judy Garland in the background. Was that image meant to represent the role the arts play in institutional racism through underrepresented characters that reflect the values or embody characteristics of marginalized groups? What a good question. Can I talk
about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I felt like one thing that I found really interesting about Suzanne's character was the fact that she was so enthralled by the movies, and she was so enthralled by mediums that like she was not like her like there was little to no representation of any other color within those movies at the time. I think the first Black person who actually got an Oscar was in Gone with the Wind. If anyone has seen that, Mammy, who like our very first the very first like Black role was like a caricature of like of like minstrel like slavery days. So win for us, I guess. That's sarcasm. But I think that's why she included that. It's the fact that like she put herself in these characters that she, especially like with Tess and the D'Urbervilles, like like Tess was not like the very first picture on the front of the book was like some like chick from England. But like she almost forced herself into these like portrayals of these characters, because where else was she going to like find solace? Where else was she going to find a safety, like a safe place for herself? So I think that that's also why like that something that like it also says in the play that she really liked Judy Garland, but I think that like on top of that, that's what I thought about when I was portraying the role, like how important these characters were for her, because they were her safe space in this terrifying world.
I do think too, there are some references. I mean, all of the songs and movies are in the play, they're mentioned. But it is interesting, the more you kind of dig in some of Adrienne Kennedy's choices, obviously they're there for reasons, but they're not always obvious. So, that song, Don't You Go Away Mad, I was like, well, that's interesting. That's kind of a catchy tune from the late 40s. But I looked it up, to find the reference, and it's actually kind of a lyrical version of something that was created by a Black artist. His name was Illinois Jaquan, I think. So the music is his, but then can't remember who did the 49 version that was so popular and commercialized and probably got all the money for it. But that was a white guy, you know, who took that music and put lyrics to it. So it's interesting. And then Oklahoma is mentioned. And you know, there are a lot of things in Oklahoma that, you know, one could view as, I don't know, so like, racist, but also in terms of like settler colonialism. The selection that is chosen for the play, you know, talks about, here we are, we're going to have this brand new state, you know, and it's kind of this idea that, you know, we're going to be treated great, you know, that this is all kind of about, you know, brand new, you know, no people here at all. We're just going to move right in, and sort of the history of this country as well. So there are other aspects of colonialism and imperialism in the speeches of King Arthur that are quoted in the text. So there's a lot in there that you can dig into in terms of the, you know, intertextuality of the play, for sure. So, you know, there is a list of references in the program, and we tried to kind of, you know, play with that a little bit. The last version of Don't You Go Away, Mad is an Ella Fitzgerald version that Jordan suggested early on, you know, to use. So we tried to kind of revise a little bit, you know, how you hear some of those pieces in the play. And the first entrance, the pre-show music, is composed by a Black violinist. And, you know, I didn't know. I mean, when I was looking up Black violinists, because I knew I wanted to have some kind of, to have a Black composer do the music for the pre-show. I mean, there are so many I've never heard of, you know, and their music is beautiful. So I think, you know, that erasure of history and sort of trying to put it back also is really important when you do a play by a Black playwright, that there is a recalling, but there's a recalling to fill in also. It's not just, oh, let's see what the history was according to white people. Let's fill it in with some of the history of Black people too.
Yeah, I think that there is a lot to say and a big conversation to be had about representation and how representation affects the Black community as a whole, but especially the impression that it makes on young children. Growing up, specifically to reference Roger and Hammerstein's that movie, 1997 Cinderella with Brandy and Whitney Houston in it. That was my Cinderella. I did not know that she was white before that. That was what I grew up with. Martin, you know, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, The Cosby Show, you know, all of these big Black shows that showcased our life normally, not the slave, the maid, the ghetto friend, the sidekick that aids the white person who gets to do all these great, amazing things. You know, these were the shows that a lot of, I think our generation grew up on due to our parents. And we got to see ourselves represented the way that we see ourselves in real life. And I think there's a lot to be said, not just about representation on television, but representation behind the screen, in the room where it happens, as Gina has said a lot of times to me. And how, you know, if you don't have Black people seated at the table, you're not going to tell the story right. It's not going to be told right because we can't check everything you're doing. You know, it's not micromanaging. It's, hey, this is not really what happened. And when you constantly have white people who are in power allowed to tell our history, and when you put them in those positions and they don't ask Black people, hey, how did this happen? Hey, what should we do here? Then you are aiding and abetting the wrongful telling of our history. And the representation that happens behind the screen is just as equally important as what happens on screen. I was listening to an interview that Candace Patton did. She plays on The Flash, and her character was originally a white character, but then she got cast, and so her entire family got cast as Black. And they talk about in the show a lot this like famous noodle recipe, And that's not really like a Black recipe that gets passed down. I can't, off the top of my head, think of any Black like noodle recipes. And she talked a lot about hair and makeup and how she did not feel that she was represented enough, and she did not feel comfortable enough allowing white hair designers and makeup artists work on her. So if you do watch the show, she has her hair straight the entire show. This new season is the only season where she has it curly for one episode. Absolutely one episode. And it's those little things of where actors don't feel comfortable. You know, you can't just put a Black character into a white position. It doesn't work like that. You have to encompass culture. You have to ask questions. You can't do things like that. And just think, oh, well, this is fine. You know, you have to invite us to help you. We want it to look good just as badly as you do. And I think that Hillary did a very good job of that as a director. I cannot think of a better director to have done this show. She asked a lot of questions. She included us very much so in the conversations. She was the ally that knew that she had a seat at the table and pulled up more chairs for the rest of us to sit. That's just the kind of person that she was. And for that, I'm very grateful to have even gotten this opportunity to work on this show, because I'm not a theater major or minor or anything of the sort. So just getting this position and having so many questions asked, she's very inquisitive of it without being overbearing. And I think that that is very important to have in a department at a white institution.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. We have time for just one last question. And it's from Jolana.
Jolana.
We love her so much. What was your favorite moment while working with everyone on the cast?
Oh, well, seeing her progression from novice violinist to absolute prodigy just was fantastic.
It was amazing. Honestly, like working with this cast was so, I think the perfect word for it is healing. It was so healing to work with this group of people that I personally can't even consider just cast and crew. Like, I genuinely believe that, like, we were meant to spend this, you know, challenging time together so that we could be here for each other and talk to each other and have a space every night to come and just talk about how we were feeling and be with each other. And I just personally am so thankful to have learned, to have listened, and to have talked with so many of you guys about, and just made like lifelong friends. It's a gift, especially during this time when, you know, socialization isn't really available, you know? It's been a really a privilege for me.
I'll go next since I'm on the bottom row. My favorite part about like this whole process was how happy this process was. The show was so dark. It was a deep, dark abyss. But like at the same time, like as soon as like we're done, like I'm staring off into the distance, like encompassing all the negative emotions that I possibly could, and then I could be like, so anyway, let's joke about the 50s or something. So like the amount of joy that we still had like within our process, not as like in a disrespectful way, like meaning in like we still were able to keep our positivity together and like keeping a happy coalition as a cast. Like I really appreciated that from our get together. You know, the thing that we did, the play.
I think that's so true. And I think that Zoom actually helped with that sort of removal, because I've been in plays on the Annie and at Rollins that were, you know, dark, and in the tropics, shows where you really at the end of the night felt kind of that weight, you know. And I think that Zoom helped us be a bit further removed from that, and it was nice because we didn't have to, I don't know, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, of course, but I felt a little more removed from the trauma that we were digging up. But also I just in terms of working, we were talking about this a little bit before we went on live, but the collaborative aspect and and I was saying how I'm very used to meeting new people here in a tourist nation and the work that I do, and since the pandemic I haven't been able to, so it's been so incredible to meet so many new people, so many young artists, so many people who, you know, I've been in their shoes, and it's great to see. I don't think I was half as eloquent, half as bright and talented as these guys were when I was a Rollins senior in 2016, but it was a different time. So anyway,
We're very eloquent, Bernard. We're very eloquent in 2016. I had so much. Oh, sorry. There's another question. You had a lot of favorite moments. Well, I was just going to say I did have a lot of favorite moments, but for me, I mean, I've never done anything on Zoom before. So every time something worked, it was like, oh my God, this is working. Okay, let's keep going. It was almost like building this house of cards, you know, and you're like, okay, we've got this, let's try this. So, I mean, that first rehearsal where we, one of the first rehearsals where we experimented and it was like mind blowing. I was like, these people are so creative. They have so many ideas, you know, and Zoom had actually just come out with an update. So that was one of the reasons we were able to play around with Zoom. I mean, if we had done this a month before, I don't think we could have done it in black and white. So we were playing with all the little stickers and makeup and all the stuff. I mean, it was just, I think it was just so much fun. And that kind of spirit was like carried through. I think people felt, I certainly did okay with, you know, and maybe it was because it was Zoom, but it was okay not to know. And I think a lot of times in the theatrical space, you know, it's like, okay, we got 3 weeks, you know, like, let's block the show, you know what to do, and let's go. But I think because this is like a whole new reality, it was like, oh my God, okay, let's try this. Okay, good, that's working. Okay, let's try this. And, you know, and so, you know, it was just amazing. And even the editing, I mean, we had no idea. I was like, okay, so how is this going to be edited? Like, you know,
Shout out to Pam Clark.
I don't think we knew until like 4 o'clock in the morning this morning that, you know, that part would be okay. So it's just, it was definitely an adventure. And I think everyone was in it. If someone had been, you know, if they had started kind of taking themselves out or resisting, I think that would have been a problem. But no one did. Everyone was in it. Everyone was, you know, full on for going on this adventure. And I do think too, the fact that this play was so meaningful to all of us, you know, made the investment. Every minute we invested, you know, we knew as much fun as we were having that this was because we cared about something, and this was so important to us, you know, for different reasons and for the same reasons, you know. But I think it was like, this had to work, you know, this had to be a show we were proud of, and this had to be something that meant something to us at least, and hopefully to other people. So for all those reasons, you know, I had so many wonderful moments. So thank you guys.
We said one last question, but we saw bets come in and we couldn't resist. So as young theater professionals, how do you want and expect theater to continue uplifting voices of color at Rollins and after you leave?
I would love to. Oh no, Faith, go on.
Okay. I didn't want to just jump in, but all right.
Jump in, take it.
So, having been in Rollins for 4 years now, I'm a senior now. Oof, don't like to think about that. But but one thing that I personally made a very important mission of my own is to make sure that if anyone was going to have to deal with anything, no one was going to be disrespected because of anything that they can't control. So I personally spent a lot of separate conversations with many different people about my specific experience and what it has been. And I know that other people within the department have also spoken up and talked to the department directly about their own experiences. And that was the start of a very wonderful movement that will hold everyone accountable for their own actions, as well as uplift new voices to come into our department. Being one of the last theater, one of the last actors within the Department of Color before Jelana came, I was very worried myself last year. I was like, well, guess the legacy's dead, guess it's over. But the fact that we specifically we just did the show. We didn't worry about who were we gonna cast in the moment. We were just no, you know what? We're just gonna do the show. If we'll bring in people if we have to. We're gonna do the show. And I think that by having these type of shows in the first place, and like going out of our way to invite other people from outside of the department. That was a great start into implementing different stories and different perspectives within our department. So yeah. Sorry.
You actually covered something that I wanted to talk about. So all I have to say is that I'm so grateful to Rollins for being so dedicated to making sure to cast appropriate actors and people of color and people who are of Black origin. And I'm just so thankful to Rollins that they did that and even went to the length of reaching out to Black alumni like myself and Malachi Green, and just making sure that the story was told the way it was meant to be told. And I hope that acts as an example and an inspiration to future Rollins productions, to everyone who watched the show, to anyone who is casting anywhere and anything. Which like myself, now that I work in television, even now this is influencing the way that I cast and the way that I do what I do. And I just think more of this would be my thesis. More of this.
Yeah, I think for COVID, we went into COVID very weary, and I think as people of color, we came out much stronger. And this show is our first step to a very long stare of more shows that are going to go on and have way more people of color working backstage, working on stage, being in collaborative teams. I think my hope is that I get to see more of myself represented, not myself on stage, myself represented on stage by other people who can act that. That's my hope and my dream, because I think as a high school student, it is very tough to see to be looking at schools and to not see yourself fitting into that place, because you don't see yourself, the other people who look like you that are there. It's a very scary thing to walk into a school and just know that you are the outsider. You know, you're going to walk into situations where it's just you know, and I've had my RCC my freshman year. It was about race, and I was the only Black student. So that was very interesting, because it felt like I had to tell all of Black history, like in a one semester class, and it was just me, you know, and a lot of questions were deferred to me. And I was like, well, I didn't go through that, so I can't really, you know, tell you exactly what happened. I can only tell my part of it. And so I think seeing different Black faces are not Black face, but Black faces are very, very, very important. We had a lot of kids who are of mixed race. Bernard, Malachi, Dassica, Diane, you know, and they have stories that we don't have. Being fully Black, I don't experience the same things as them. We talked a lot about battling with self-identity when it comes to race, and I don't have those things because at the end of the day, I get to check off one box, not two. And so I think inviting even those conversations, you know, it can only go up from here. And I would be very disappointed in both myself and the department if it went down from here. I don't think that it can. I don't think that we have set it up to where it can fail. You know, everyone is working towards one common goal. We're in different lanes going in the same direction. And once everyone realizes that, the whole world of theater will open up, and it will just be so amazing and so great to see happen. And I'm very excited for that. That's it. That's my spiel. That's all I have for today.
I think this is a great time to announce that Faith Artiste will be returning to the Annie stage in 2025 as Dolores Van Cartier in Sister Act, the musical. Now it has to happen. I've said it, but now it has to happen.
It's spoken into the universe. And like we said, it can only go up from here.
I do just want to add before it seems like we're kind of getting to the point where we might be ending. So I just want to throw out too, just a couple people who this wouldn't have been possible without. One person is Sam Clark, who was our stage manager and who in basically 3 nights edited together Empty Space and Ohio State Murders. I don't think she slept during that time. She was amazing, and she was with us for every rehearsal. She was phenomenal. Also, Lisa Cody Rapport, when we moved from the idea that we were doing it on stage to Zoom, she immediately found, looked at our spaces, dealt with the lighting. She was at a number of rehearsals, and really, she and Chelsea actually really kind of took the lead in making sure this was a viable solution for us, and that this would actually work in a Zoom environment. So I just want to say that. And also Jordan, who is our moderator, I think one of the reasons the show works so well is Jordan really started us out on the right foot. She engaged us in really deep discussions of race and racism, and made us all think about our own experiences dealing with race at our own college. And we had, I think one of the reasons we built such connections with people is that we, all of us really opened up, I think, and were vulnerable in a space together, even though it was a virtual space, and learned a lot about each other and about the content of this play as it related to all of us. So I just want to thank Jordan for setting us off on the right foot with that as well. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for watching, and hope you all enjoyed our talk back, and have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for supporting us.
Thank you.